get in. Did everybody get my email with the replacement pages for, I must have sent them maybe at 1:30-ish.
Yes, I did.
Okay. I gave them to Nicole to pop up the PDF in case anybody didn't see that yet. Sometimes my shared screen from home is a little unreliable with my connection, so.
I just need to promote AJ to a panelist here, and should see him pop up in just a moment.
All right. Sorry for the delay.
All right. Ready to go?
Yeah, did I see Nikki's already on?
Yeah, Nikki's here.
Okay, very good.
Everybody else?
I'm just the tardy one. I apologize. There's a new format that I forgot to talk to the city clerk about.
It is
All
not,
right.
not quite as straightforward, that's for sure.
We'll call the January 25, 2021 Rebel City Council meeting to order, and I'll ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Carberry Montgomery.
Here.
Caduce.
Here.
Obrecht.
Here.
Hoagie.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. And I will read the character count statement. Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Sorry about that. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight? Ask for a motion in a second.
This is Ron. I'd so move.
Is there a second? Second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, roll call, please.
Hoagie.
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery.
Yes.
Caduce. Obrecht.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we covered everything the first time on Saturday, so we are done with 3.1. So we'll move on to item 3.2. I think it's really just a recap at this point. Is that correct, AJ?
That's correct. Nikki sent out earlier this afternoon some different attachments, revisions based on the discussion and based on our notes that how we interpreted the discussion on Saturday. Hopefully we hit all those buttons. Nikki, if you're there online, or did I see you're actually visual this time? I know you had some questions about being at home with your bandwidth and your kids.
Yep.
Why
So far,
don't you go
so
ahead
good.
and walk? Why don't you go ahead and walk through those particular changes that we've handed out?
Sounds good. So if you want to refer to your email that you received, we'll just do them in numeric order. So community service is first. That's in the Health and Human Services section. HSS3 is what will replace that. So in your mailboxes as well, in Nicole's office, you'll see they're bright green sheets this time. So you'll have some really, really fluorescent action going on. So the changes that we made in there, I did add the bullet point related to indicate that 5% funding that is part of the budgeted local option sales tax for Polk County. And then if you flip over to the The next section page is the Excel that reflects the changes that we talked about. And then in the notes, you can see the actual detail of that. So we have the UCAN changed down to 55,000. I see we actually have that prior year 55K needs to come out of the notes. I see that didn't get taken out. Food pantry at 37.2, keeping the NFC contribution. We reclassified that Section 8 housing out of the mayor and council budget for 17,000. And then the Metro Home Improvement Program pulled 28,000 out of the community development budget. And then all the Civil Rights Commission, you see those as the next 3 items, minor items pulled out of the city manager's budget. And then the community service as identified, that's that net difference that the committee will allocate into this next year for 103,800. And then the MAC camp support, that moves down to that line 97 that refers that it's a transfer. We have to physically transfer it out, so it doesn't come out as an expense. It comes out as a transfer for the budget purposes. So that should reflect everything that I had written down. Anybody recall anything different than that?
This is Ron. I just have a question, and it's more of a drafting than anything. If you go up in what you presented to the future budget considerations, where it talks about projects and initiatives will be vetted by the committee, I think somewhere in there we should say, and then be presented to the city council to make the decision. I think it could be interpreted to mean that all the decisions are made at the subcommittee level.
Yep, absolutely. We can add that. Yeah, that's definitely implied that would come back just like we do for the hotel motel piece. That's what we were envisioning. So I will add that definition in there. Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. After that section, we skip into community and economic development tab. And the changes will be replaced onto CED 11. And the only change there is to the removal then of that Metro Home Improvement Program that we just talked about. We just transferred it over to the community services budget instead. So that's the only change there, but that budget then goes down.
I guess actually a quick question on that program. Did we spend any money out of that program this year?
Improvement is the one that we send over to West Des Moines, I believe. AJ, isn't that the one that so they oversee that? Is Steve Franklin on by any chance to know? I don't know if they send a report of that.
They do.
Oh, there is Steve.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, sorry.
I think last time I checked, I believe it varies every year in terms of how many homes we have that take advantage of that program. They do send out, you can call it any time and find out. They generally do send out a summary once a year. And I believe in 2020, if I remember correctly, I do not have that information with me, we did have 4 houses in 2020 that took advantage of the program. Well, you know what? As I think about it, I think it was 7. I wish I had that. I don't. It was either 4 or 7. There are some years where we don't have homes that take advantage of it because there is an income cap. There are income requirements associated with this program. We're always trying to get people to take advantage of it. But in 2020, that was a year where we did have some homes take advantage of it, yes.
Thanks.
Report out to us at your convenience.
It gives a summary of how many cities had how many homes. And that's all it is. It's just a general city and this many homes applied this year. But absolutely, yep.
How do we get the word out about that program?
You know, it's probably something to talk to Derek about. I know we've got information on our website about it, but we could honestly probably do a better job of pushing it out than we do. So I'm making myself a note right now to talk to Derek about how to improve what we're doing.
That's great. But I'd like to see that report when you get a chance. No hurry, though.
Yep, sure will.
That one? If not, then jump to general government, GG3, mayor and council's budget. So this one is where we moved out the Section 8 housing out of line 24. We also made the change for 2 and 2 for the Greater Des Moines Partnership DC trip, 2 for fall, 2 for spring. You'll notice that the amount actually didn't change. Looking at that, that's actually the same amount where we had 4 in there. So we're actually, because the full ticket price with hotel and lodging, or hotel and airfare, was like $22.50 this year. So this allows for $2,500 to allow for an up if it goes up a little bit, plus another $500 for any other expenses that go in. So we did change that, but the amount didn't have to change. So that was just a carryover from last year that we had 4 in there. So that one is, let's see. Yeah, that was the only change in there. Section 8 housing came out.
Right.
And then the next section, very next tab for, or not tab, but city manager budget. This is the one that all of the civil rights items came out of. So 3 quite small items, but those were all removed from city manager and moved over to community services, as we just talked about. And let's see, the other page I sent you is the lost revenue. This is the all the way back. Sorry, we should have started there. Budget summaries in BS number 9, the local option sales tax page. This is just updated to reflect the contribution out to community services was up to 305 for 22, and then the out year matches that budget of 6.2 million. 5% is 310. So that's the only thing that has changed there. Magically, the state still has not released the sales tax report, so I still can't unhighlight that big middle section with the actual results. So hopefully before we actually adopt this thing, we'll have some updated numbers to put in there.
Nikki, got a couple questions on lost.
Yep.
Came up sense of, well, we track it county by county. There's no restriction on where the dollars are spent.
Correct.
Okay. And then, so we've kind of got a Dallas County statement and a Polk County statement. Is there an opportunity for us to ever get those 2 statements to agree in a future election? I think on the school side, they go back to the voters and say, we want to amend how we can spend this money. Is that ever an option on this, or is it 10-year timeline from initial?
Well, we didn't put a sunset. Yeah, so we didn't put a sunset on it, so it does not have to be re-upped. I would assume that by the same action in which you passed the item, that you could amend the questions. The only difference on the 2 questions is that there is or other lawful purpose on the Polk County question. That's I don't have the wording right in front of me, but I believe they're otherwise verbatim, are they not? AJ, is that
Yes,
how you
correct.
recall it too?
Yeah.
The any lawful purpose on the Polk County piece was the only addition, because those are such material dollars to give us a little bit of flexibility on that, but otherwise they match 50-50.
Right, and the difference when we did the first election for Dallas County is that we didn't have the 50% requirement under the state law that we did on the Polk County side.
Right, but it's still in place at 50%.
The council chose to have that language, but the Polk County side was mandatory.
It does.
Okay. So we do keep it, that's at the top of that. That is why I have that broken out separately, because we actually created 4 separate funds for the loss, so that it was quite clear which part was being allocated to each. So I have related to the 2 50% pieces of both Dallas and Polk, and we track those separately. So we have 4 funds making up our loss. So that's why I have it all broken out that way, so we can see which bucket it is coming out of at any given time. Okay. And the last thing that I sent to you is the alternate page for the pool. We wanted to, so that helped clear up that we want to keep the dollars in. That is not a problem. And then that helps actually, because then it doesn't affect any of the deadlines that we were talking about. So we don't need to know tonight what you're going to do operationally. It's clear we want to keep the dollars in. And so I wanted to just show you what that, by the time we adopt the budgets, which is March 9th, will be the actual hearing. From the perspective of dollars, that's all I need. I just need to know that we wanted to budget the full $711,000. So what I gave you is the option for the alternative activity notes. And I know AJ will talk a little bit about process from here, that this would be what it might look like if you decided, yep, we're going to close it, but here's the other things that 711 could be spent on. So you'll see those details that are listed there. So moving forward with the design plan, similar to what we looked at, Jan pulled up what we paid for the fire station, just to get an idea, since that was also a referendum process. To get a ballpark, it was about 100. I think it was actually less than that. So we gave ourselves some cushion there at 120,000 to get that process ready. If there happened to be any other remediation related to this underground storage tank, assuming that happens mostly this year, but you never know. So we built in a little bit there, and then all the payments out. So Clive, Goldfish, YMCA, all the things that we're providing now that we would need to match some kind of a discount, make those whole once we actually have a year of real activity. Those are a shot in the dark based on kind of what we saw so far, but that was a really short season by the time we actually got it rolled out. So best guess there. And then the potential for demolition of the actual pool. So still the exact same dollars. And the staff person is still in there. Obviously, it might not actually be charged to the pool, but the expense would be there within the fund. She would move on to a different purpose within the recreation function. So we just put that out there to make sure that you have what that might look like. So I think once that's discussed March 9th, before we actually publish the document, it would be ideal to have it match what the intention is, but it takes the pressure off you having to make a decision, as the mayor said, not necessarily in line with the budget process. You don't have to decide it there, but it would be nice before we publish the actual document after we adopt in March to have activity notes that match intent. So AJ, do you want to chime in on the rest of that discussion?
Yeah, you've covered a lot of that. Thank you, Nikki. That we recognize that, with the inclusion of the underground storage tank and how that may impact the project and how it affects the site was certainly something that was brought not in the scope of our normal operations. It was brought in advance of your discussion. So that put a different perspective on things because it added a significant additional cost associated with the pool. I reached out to the city attorney to find out his interpretation of our agreement with the school district as to cost share associated with if now that this has been discovered and it's been on site since well in advance of, been there for the existence of the pool almost, that is this something that might be covered? So there's that outstanding question there, but we recognize that this was a bit of a monkey wrench that we threw into this discussion, and that the council should have time to absorb that in association with everything else we do. Then there was a discussion about, can we now re-energize that discussion, or having the pool team that was identified in March and was set to begin that process of review. Is that again kind of a reaffirmation of that? But it gives us until March 9th. We bought about a month of here in discussion. We can find time either at the lunch and learn is getting a little full, and Jan's going to be gone for the lunch and learn, so we're not going to. I don't think we'd want to have any further discussion when she's not here. But to find some time in March that's amenable to everybody, either before a council meeting or a lunch and learn type of setting, where you can have a little bit more in-depth discussion about where you'd like to go with this whole situation. So we did buy ourselves some time, as Nikki mentioned. We still have the dollar amount. Those numbers can be shifted around. We feel confident that we still have the agreement, although it's not formalized. We have a number of conversations, not only with myself and the city manager and Clyde, but Jan with the parks director, and that message is still the same. They are still amenable to us having a relationship this swimming season where they would allow us to send our residents, and then we would reimburse for the difference between the non-resident and the resident pass. So as Nikki mentioned, we've identified, not particularly by line item, but by dollar amount, that we can cover those. So we do have some more issues that the council will need to resolve, and it gives you a little bit more time to filter in everything that we presented on Saturday into how you wish to proceed with the discussion when it comes to the pool. There was discussion. We had a nice discussion this morning with staff, And, you know, some of the comments on Saturday was, well, if we're not ready yet to make that final determination on the pool, and we certainly appreciate that, because what we talked about before, this is kind of a three-component issue. This is an operational, this is a financial, and this is almost a political or an emotional decision that goes in to a 40-year-old plus facility that's been a stalwart of the community for so long. It has some geographic and some personal meaning to a lot of individuals, how they view that and how they view it, how we might move forward on a particular project. So I think it gives us that time in the month, to go through this whole process, but it also, we have the chance to come back and still say that the pool isn't closing, we're just looking at our options, and we have the financial capability to look at, if you want to have an opening, again, COVID related, in the late summer, early fall, if that presents itself. So I think we have given ourselves a lot of flexibility, but it still is desirable that if there is some additional conversation we can have in February, to get a little bit more clarity to this.
AJ, if I,
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Vicki.
Jen. The question that I wanted to show on that was, we were clarifying the piece on the Clive, paying that discount piece. So the assumption is if we're going to reopen, we weren't going to offer that. That's only if we're closing. Can we confirm that that was the consensus? Because that was one of the clarifications of that would trade out expenses that we currently have. But if our facility is going to open, we wouldn't need to offer all of those partnership programs. Is that correct? Anybody thumbs up? Checking to make sure we understood that correctly. Obviously, we'd be
My
competing with
understanding
them.
is that if we have capacity, if our pool does not have water in it, does not have people coming to it, we do the partnership program. Pool has water in it and the doors are open, then that's when the partnership programs would cease. That's my understanding.
That's why.
Given some direction to Jan on to checking with Clive of when would they start selling, the 2080 is in hand, I believe, the draft. So working through that to make sure we understand what's timelines for Clive to make sure, we don't want them to start selling passes thinking this is happening. If we're thinking, no, we're going to reopen, then we would need to just make sure what their timelines are to not mess them up either.
Yeah,
Hey, Nikki,
the Clive one's going to be the tougher one. Like the swim lessons is easy, but the Clive one's going to be tougher because, say, in March we have the intent that no water is going to be in the pool for a while, but by July, August we have the pool, and so Clive we may get stuck with, whereas the others are going to be easier to say, hey, now we have water, let's cancel them.
Be the made longer term, yes, totally agree with that.
Maybe a little bit, but it's not going to be a huge cost, I don't think. But yeah, if we have an annual pass, it's kind of hard to stop that right during the year.
I think we should commit to this season of passes to subsidizing when they start selling them in the next month or two, that we should commit to being party to that. And then if our pool is open next year, then we don't do it next year.
so just to clarify, Bridget, if for some reason you as a council say, we're going to be open this summer, that was our concern. If now we're sending people somewhere else, certainly they have different amenities, but we'd send them somewhere else. I think I heard last night with COVID and vaccines and the question, it might be even as late as this fall, if we were to reopen, then certainly if we're not open this summer. But again, perhaps if we have a discussion outside of this meeting, we can talk more about that, of staffing issues and a lot less revenue in the winter and so forth. But I certainly am in agreement. If we're not open during the summer, yes, Clive I think it's a big win to do that.
And it's also, kind of just that reminder is that Clive is an outdoor facility, and their operational season is about 12 weeks. And so, if we gear ourselves to reopen mid to late summer, early fall, we're probably catching the tail end of their outdoor program, and Jan, correct me again, the types of activities that we offer versus what Clive have are different. You know, we're more lesson program based. The Clive facility, as in any outdoor aquatic facility, is more geared toward come on in and have fun. It's a hot day, go swimming.
If I may also inquire with you as a council on Saturday, I think, Adam, you had mentioned the question in regards to what credits that we still have on the books, per se. Talking to AJ and Nikki, we wanted to discuss it with you if it makes sense, as was, I think, somewhat suggested. Do we just clean the slate now, refund everybody? Talking with Nikki where that might be the easiest. So going into a new fiscal year, everybody, and we might change, who knows, we might change pricing. If we were to reopen, there's some reprogramming things. So, and just maybe send a note to the patrons of essentially of just indicating there's so much uncertainty yet in regards to COVID and programming and so forth. We just want to get everybody's refunds, and then we'll start anew if the pool reopens. Is that, are you supportive as a council for a staff to proceed with that?
Jan. And I think it cleans it up for Nikki by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Don't you think, guys?
Yes.
Reflected in the Excel document of the pool, if you look at the revised 21, I actually did put in, because it's a $44,000 worth of refunds that would be sent out this year. And then you'll also see that I added in the anticipated worst case what we know at this moment, 165 in the line 76 property improvements, even though I suppose it's improvements because we're remediating. So I guess that's an improvement. Digging out the tank, that is reflected in this current year budget. So you'll see that number in the fiscal 21 revised column pops back up there to 600,000 from where we were before. So that's taking care of it in this year. Since we knew that those were coming. So yes, I had reflected the assumption that we were going to move forward with cleaning out those refunds and reset for the fiscal year.
Okay, so I guess my quick look at it, we've got property improvements of 165, and then in the next budget, we're saying another 100.
We put in a little buffer there in the event we have. So yes, we have current year that we would take care of what we think we know about. And then we just put in a cushion there. I was trying to make sure we were coming up with $700,000 worth of expenses of what that could look like. I have no idea. You know, I mean, we might only spend the 36 this year to deal with it, and then that's fine. So this is just worst case scenario of what that looks like today, and then potentially gives us some room to, if we need to do additional remediation or anything further downstream, who knows what may come of that. At worst, we don't spend that next year. If we don't need it, great. I would love to not do any more in that area. But we also need to update, demo costs and, cost of doing a new study. These are ballparks from fire station, which was 4 years ago that we actually secured those services. So just giving ourselves a little flexibility.
I had 36 in my mind, and seeing 265 between the two was kind of obviously a big jump. So.
For step one. So I'm hoping that is all we need, is just siphon it out, and that's all we have to do. But the soil remediation is the piece that had a big question mark, and we still haven't gotten anybody out to actually look at that. So we'll learn a lot, obviously, in the next couple of weeks as we get that moving. But we were just trying to show that if we budgeted, this is what the activity notes could look like, subject to change, obviously.
Good.
Helpful. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. The other thing I realized I did not attach to that email, but Ron had asked for it, of backing in those TIF numbers. You would ask for what that percentage was that we started off Saturday with, instead of being the 70-30. So if the TIF numbers are added in, your commercial breakdown is actually goes to 36% and 63.9. So 64 and 36% is your split with TIF taken into account, because that is all commercial and industrial. So I can send that out in an attachment as well, but I crunched the numbers and then forgot to attach that. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's helpful to know that. So it pushes that blue line up a little better.
Yes, the blue line. Curtis will be happy. I gave him some blue line increase just without even trying.
6%, good.
Yeah. So any questions or things that I might have missed from our discussion on Saturday? That's all I had on my list. I have some grammatical things and some little minor aesthetic items to fix in there, but I didn't have any other action items from a numbers perspective. Anybody have anything written down that I missed?
I was just going to add, Nikki, you mentioned about from a numbers perspective, we're still going to compare our notes to make sure that the non-number items, the items that any alterations in a presentation or activity that you want to get an update that weren't number sensitive, we'll still put that together as well.
Right. I'm just worried about mechanics at this moment. So we do our publication next. So if we don't have any other changes, that's what we go through with that initial set of publications for the max rate levy hearing will be first, which I showed you. That won't change from what I showed you, other than we have to put the narrative down why we're asking for 5.2%. So I will add that part, but and then we drop it into the state's form and get that ready for the regular publication, and we'll set the date here coming up, and March 9th would be your next step for the actual public hearing.
A way to, we're basically obligated to publish the state's form, right? I just, in reading your note about, I anticipate there'll be some confusion on it, on the 3 levies. It looks like we're raising taxes, but people are actually going to walk away with a little bit of a decrease. There's no way to publish that extra levy, is there, to show up? Yeah, that's.
We've all tried. That was our, every Metro City, we all lobbied for that. So we put it in the wording down below. So in my narrative, if you look at last year's, we say this does not include a levy of $1.64 for debt service, bringing our total levy to X. So we put the wording in there, but we can't add anything to the table. So it's subject to them actually reading it, which is not always going to happen. So that's, yes, it's a icky part of it is we can't do what we need to do there. So we try our best to do it in the narrative. But yeah, it's unfortunately their form or nothing. They will not accept a different variant.
Right.
Kind of my concern, but I thought it might help save some headaches, but no such luck.
I've tried.
And
you mentioned about making sausage. This is making sausage.
Yeah.
Front row seat.
And some groups that look at our budgets. I mean, last year we had an issue with that. I mean, we were actually going down, but we had to do what the state mandated, and it was very, frankly, I think it's certainly not reflective of what we're doing, and we have to explain that. And it's hard to explain that, but that's what the state mandated. So.
Because of COVID and how we really increased our social presence, that might give us an opportunity to put things out there for the general audience. But the mayor's right. We're always going to have somebody who comes back and says, aha, you did something wrong, or it didn't match what the state was supposed to do. And I think we even had questions from some state officials too.
Well, that and Taxpayer Association. I mean, some groups that you think that could read through that, but we did some education even with the Taxpayers Association on it. So.
Yeah, good point.
Control.
Yep.
That's on my forever wish list. When I blow out my birthday candles, that's what I always wish for.
Explanation. I was concerned that might be where this was headed, but I appreciate that. AJ, we're going to work on some Powerball tickets or something for you to wish for next time.
Okay, very good.
All right. Any further discussion on that? Well, I think.
Yeah, sign off, because I got that other call I got to go to.
Well,
we don't need to vote or anything. There's no on this.
No, not
Okay.
tonight, but we do have the additional stormwater discussion. That
Right.
And
Yeah,
we
and I
can-
know
we can
about that.
We can expedite that discussion relatively quickly as long as, if we can segue, if we're okay with what we've presented, have we hit the buttons? Because if we hit
some top secret urban.
I missed that. Anyway, if we can move on to the next item, we can expedite that discussion for the next item.
Okay. Let's move forward.
Okay. I want to make sure Curtis and John, and are you on?
I just promoted them to panelists, so you should see them available to pop up here in just a moment.
Okay.
This is John. I'm on now.
Okay, very good. Thank you, John. And is Curtis there?
Yes, sir.
There he is. All right, thank you very much. Well, on the agenda, we had stormwater discussion, and the reason we put it on there was really kind of dovetailing off the conversations we've had over the last several weeks with the representatives of the Merle Hay Mall and the Bucks concerning their project moving forward. And as you all are aware, there's a number of moving parts associated with that project. You know, the Bucks project in itself is a standalone in as much as relocation of that existing operation from its location on Hickman to the Merle Hay Mall and everything that is involved in there. And then, again, it dovetails into the discussion we've had with the mall and with our counterparts in the city of Des Moines in the whole redevelopment scheme of the entire mall property. And one of the things that we talked about at staff in our discussions, preliminary discussions with the city of Des Moines and with the mall representatives about how we address stormwater related issues. I think as you all heard when we had our conversations with Liz and with Michael, she certainly acknowledged that stormwater, she knew that was a hot button topic with council in the community. And so, and rightly so, and she obviously understands that on development or redevelopment projects, there are requirements for stormwater, and they understand that, they acknowledge that. As you all know, the devil's always in that detail about where we get to that point of everybody agreeing. And so what we thought we'd do tonight because we really don't have any specifics to share with you, but what we want to do is kind of set the table for our ongoing discussions with those entities and how they will then hopefully result in a master development plan or development agreement that incorporates not only the things that we're working on with the Bucks specifically for their project, but site-related issues that we know that are important to the council and the community, as well as to the mall ownership. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Curtis, and then he can give you kind of a more specific discussion points about what we're talking about in the mall component. And then also John Larson, the city engineer, is with us tonight, and he can share in perspective some stormwater related issues that I think are important for council just to see visually as to the scope of what we talk about. I think when we talk about stormwater, sometimes we have a tendency to regionalize it or site specific on issues. And I think it's important that what we discussed this afternoon with staff is that it really introduced an entirely different perspective to our discussion. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Curtis, please.
Right on. Thank you, AJ. Thanks, Mayor and council members, for the opportunity again. I'm just going to make some brief notes that set the context for where we're at with the project and where this is going. And then, as AJ said, John's going to give some more perspective. So one important thing to know is that the City of Des Moines Urban Design Review Board is in the process right now of moving toward a master plan for the Merle Hay Mall campus. And that master plan is actually a requirement of the TIF development agreement that the City of Des Moines has with Abel Properties or Liz Holland. So I'll just use Liz Holland as mall ownership. And so a master plan has to be done that starts to pin down the design of the site, which then is further refined through the zoning and ultimately the site plan and building permit process. So where the city of Des Moines is at in that master plan process is that late last year, the Urban Design Review Board considered the first draft of the master plan. The members of the board gave feedback to Liz Holland and essentially said, here's our thoughts, go back and try again. And some of the comments they had were with regard to pedestrian movement across the site, generally softening the site, landscaping, permeability, things like that. We also know that that this management of stormwater is an important part of any master plan. And so it's the expectation of both cities, Des Moines and Urbandale, that stormwater is one of the components that's addressed in the master plan. Please keep in mind that at the master plan stage of it, there is, you could call them rough bubbles or places where stormwater could be managed on the site, but doesn't exactly pin down in that precise way that a site plan would. It's also important to note that while the process is being managed by the city of Des Moines and is a requirement of their process, the master planning is for the entire site, including Urbandale. So in a way, Des Moines is running this process, which ultimately will set the pattern for the Urbandale side as well. And it's helpful because we don't want there to be two different things happening on either side of the site. It really, for practical purposes, the line is invisible to anybody who would use it. So it's good to have it coordinated. So where we're at right now is that the master plan, the next iteration of the master plan, will go to the Urban Design Review Board probably in February. So in the interim, the staff from both cities are working with Liz Holland and her team to make sure that the next draft of the master plan can pass muster with the Urban Design Review Board. As we know, one of the major things is dealing with the stormwater. It's a factor that can't be ignored. Liz is aware of it, and as we had our meetings with you and Liz Holland and Michael Devlin of the Bucks ownership, they know it is too. So what we're working to do is, as we put together the final pieces of what we hope will be a successful project here, like any major investment project where the city is going to make contributions and so will a developer, we will ultimately work on the terms of a development agreement that certainly will involve Michael Devlin, the Bucks ownership, and his group. It may involve Liz Holland as well, depending on how that fits into the development agreement we negotiate. But that development agreement will pin down all of the we'll do this, you'll do that. And we assume that if there is kind of any assistance with the infrastructure, that will be identified as well. So coming in for a landing on this, as we get down to all of the details in the development agreement, one of the factors that we're going to pay close attention to is how we deal with the stormwater issue as we come into the final development and ultimately to a site plan. And tonight, the city staff essentially want to indicate our standard will be the standards that we have in place for management of stormwater. And so if there is redevelopment of a site, all of the standards that we apply elsewhere would apply here. That is the baseline, and that's how we always begin development agreements, because we're very aware of precedence and consistency. That's something we always talk about, is that we try to treat people fairly and have a consistent process that is applied project after project. It's just basic fairness. Now, the asterisk on that is that redevelopment is a very difficult process and presents a lot of challenges that greenfield development does not. And so as we go through this, and Urbandale doesn't have a lot of experience in projects that are this major in terms of redevelopment. So as we go through the process, our standard will be what the standard is for development. But ultimately, when we bring you a negotiated development agreement, we will try to stay to that standard, but we'll work to produce an agreement that both gets the project done and works to protect the stormwater standards that we have in place. So with that context, knowing that we're working on negotiating a good deal, it would be helpful for John Larson to show the more details on the options for the stormwater, really the challenges in the wider perspective of that stormwater basin.
Quick question, Curtis. You mentioned standards. Are we talking like the support the city gives towards it, or are we talking about the amount of water that flows off the site?
Both.
Okay. I can help answer that.
Yep.
When we talk that we would start with our normal standards, what we're referring to as the standards here is we would look at this site as a full redevelopment. While some of the walls may stay, sounds like the roof could go, they're going to repurpose, remodel, completely redo it, and then also add the hotel there. So we would treat this as a brand new site, like they were starting it off prior to development and meet all current standards. So again, kind of saying, this was all grass, and that's where they're starting. That's our expectation to start with for their detention requirements. Does that answer that for you, Adam? Okay. So as
Before you get going, John.
Sure.
So Curtis, you were very clear that our past and our general intentions are, I think the words you used, to be fair and consistent.
Yep.
So by you making it very clear that that's how we have been operating,
yes,
that leads me to believe that we might be deviating from those in this situation. And I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I just want to make sure I'm getting what you're throwing down.
It's and if we're picking up what you're laying down is we have to start at a standard. There are good reasons that they're in place. We don't know how the process is going to end up. We both want to get this successful project done and stay as close to the standard as possible. But redevelopment is a major challenge, and some of these things we haven't encountered before in some of the projects, or in most. I think I could easily say in the vast majority of the projects that we work on, we don't deal with these kinds of challenges.
And maybe to expand.
Okay.
Yep, expand a little bit. Sorry, just to expand a little bit on Curtis. Again, we as staff have preliminarily looked to try to see, is it possible for full detention to be provided on the site? We feel it is, but this isn't, our site to where we have all the engineering documents they have. So there may be something we do not know about.
Mm-hmm.
And then my second question for you, Curtis, I have some history with Urban Design Review Board, and
mm-hmm.
they are kind of prickly. Are they being irrational? I got to choose my words carefully. But are they looking at this? Isn't a downtown project, so I think there's probably less concern from them on things. But are they being reasonable? In your estimation?
I think so. I think the point where we're at is that we realize what gets identified in a master plan sets the pattern for the rest of the development. Everybody wants the project to happen. I think that's the ultimate goal. I haven't detected unreasonableness at this point, and I would say it's really good that the cities of Urbandale and Des Moines are working as well together as we are.
appreciate that. I just know they get really into some detail level that they probably don't need to be in some projects. So I'm glad they're not necessarily on this project. So
You bet.
thank you both.
Certainly. John, do you want to, I queued it up that you would show more options, challenges, and a wider perspective. So
Sure. If there aren't any other questions, if Nicole could give me permission, I just have a couple exhibits to show. Okay. All right, you see my screen now?
We do.
Okay. Just for some perspective, so we're just looking at the mall site, Merle Hay over here, Douglas down here. This brown line that shoots through here, that's our boundary between Urbandale and Urbandale and Des Moines. Just to kind of get a feel for the area here that is, call it our portion of the mall versus Des Moines' portion of the mall. We're maybe 1/3 of the total area that makes up the mall. And as we've always been saying, it'd be really nice if we could have some detention on the mall site. As you can see, the site's not 100% paved right now, but it's close to that. So any kind of detention that we can add to the site will definitely be an improvement. I just wanted to kind of show, though, the overall watershed and how much the mall is in proportion. So this is from when we were looking at the Snyder study to see what we could do about the flooding that was happening at the box culvert at Urbandale Avenue. So as you can see, the total drainage area that comes down to the area where we had the issue with the culvert is 1.4 square miles. And to kind of put that in perspective, up here at the northwest corner, that's 70th and Aurora Avenue. Here we come down Merle Hay. Here's Merle Hay and Urbandale Avenue, Merle Hay and Hickman, Merle Hay and Franklin. So you can kind of see that's a very, very large area. When we start looking at the mall, is just the portion in Urbandale is just this little bit that is up in here. So again, I think it's good to get all the detention we can off the mall site, but I just don't want anybody to think that, we add detention to the mall, all our problems downstream go away. There's just a lot larger area that drains there, and it would take a lot more detention, other things to remedy that. That's kind of why the original report kept talking about how they just could not find enough area right along the drainage way to add detention to fix the problem. So again, just wanted to make sure everybody kind of understood the mall. We can make improvements, but it does not fix all the problems that we have out there.
Those are the comments that John and I had prepared. AJ, if there's any summary you want to make, otherwise we could take any questions from you.
Well, again, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate the update on that because it's part of the, again, a follow-up discussion that we've had internally a number of times, is that what we've all along thought about this process, as Curtis said, we want to start off in a fair and a reasonable position that is consistent with how we've talked with other developers. I think John's perspective on it as well, as we've always looked at it as a redevelopment site, even though the footprint will remain relatively the same, except for the addition of the hotel. And we also are cognizant of the fact that this has the potential to be a real significant boost to that area that could hopefully lead to other redevelopment interests along the Douglas corridor, as has been indicated as a strategic priority of the council. Having said all that, the reason we wanted to bring this all to your attention tonight in this conversation is because of the timing that's going on. There is a lot of activity that will be ramping up here in February and March in advance of the application for the Iowa Reinvestment Act application, and then our ongoing discussions with the partners, with Merle Hay Mall and with Des Moines. And so what we were looking for is to give you this background and to get a consensus from the council that, knowing all of this, that we will start off in one position. We'll see what kind of reaction we get from the mall as far as how they're going to address and react to the requirements for drainage. And then knowing that, again, without specifics, that we have flexibility on behalf of the city to work toward a compromise or a resolution position that is amenable to both parties. Obviously, the council will have to take the final step of approval, and that will certainly be made known to the folks, particularly at the mall. But we wanted to start out to say, as we do with any project, address your drainage issue and show us what you're going to do. And then we're in a position to say, boy, you've done a great job and you got a few tweaks here. Or we can come back and say, as any negotiating process, boy, you really are off the mark. We really need to have more in-depth discussion concerning the drainage issue. And that, I think, is what we're looking for tonight, is that flexibility, and particularly from the engineering side, because as we talked about this, it was really one of those, wow, we've got these standards that we've set. We know this is a council, a big issue with the council. How much latitude are we going to have? And certainly, there's nothing that we would do administratively or staff level that would compromise our position without any type of authority from council. So I think that's where we're at right now, is to looking for that kind of that consensus that as we work our way through these discussions, we know that we have that latitude when we get into more of those reactive moments, when we react to what they bring to us. And then we're in a better position to assess what they're going to bring to us, where the gaps are, and what we might suggest to address those gaps. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I've got my new headset here, and I think there's at times a delay, so I apologize.
People were listening. I think your plan's fine. I think, a redevelopment of an area is always much, much more difficult than going out on green space. And I think you're right. Let's see what they come up with and whether or not we can get to where we need to get with what they propose.
It's great. You kind of set down what you were hoping for, and let's see what they come up with. But it's a good project, so we'll see what. Hopefully they're being as creative. They certainly have been in the finances and things like that. So I'm sure they'll be creative in trying to come up with a solution.
Well, I object to Ron's insinuation that we all weren't listening. No, I think that
I was trying to justify myself as much as anybody else.
No, I think this project is so critical that we need to be as flexible. I mean, I don't want you to go out and give it all away, but if we've got to do what we've got to do to make this project work for a variety of reasons in our community. So I am supportive of doing what it takes to get this project to happen, pending our final approval of it.
And that's, one of the things that we talked about, and I'm glad John showed that map with the drainage area. I believe, and Curtis or John, correct me if I'm wrong, that Liz is as motivated because really some of the more immediate water issues are on her site. I mean, they do flow downhill, but at the same time, she's experienced this as well. And if she's kicking off a redevelopment that is adding new retail and a new entertainment center, having, when the hockey season starts in the fall and goes to the spring, certainly it could be subject to some type of water event. That's not good for business. There's a community component of it, and there's always that business side of it. How is she going to make this thing work and continue to have an environment that is conducive to inviting the public there to participate in everything that they're doing?
Yep.
I think, I'm guessing that we have consensus. I don't know if Mr. Russell is still with us or is he signed off?
I think he signed off.
Oh, okay.
But
John and
I'm not-
Curtis, do we need anything more?
Thank you.
Nope, I got the thank you. John?
I'm
All
good.
right.
You guys. All right. Well, with
That's all we
that-
have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, until tomorrow night. So,
Yeah.
everybody stay safe tonight, and I'll ask for a motion and a second to adjourn for tonight.
This is Ron. I'd move to adjourn.
One item, real
Second.
quick,
Oh.
Mr. Mayor.
SAJ.
If you could pass a resolution to force Russell to pay that kid more than $25 to clear his driveway. I think he's getting there. He's getting there.
So moved.
He's getting a bargain.
No kidding.
I
Tony just
apologize. I
came
couldn't
in
help that.
Tony just came in from an initial sweep and said it's pretty thick out there.
Yeah.
One sweep, I'm about ready to go out and do the second one. I think I might have 3 or 4 by tonight.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I apologize.
That's all right.
Well, I second Ron's motion to adjourn.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We are adjourned for tonight. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again tomorrow night.
Good night.
So long.
Thanks for using